So as you can see, navigating your forced evolution, it's a webinar, really. It's more of a conversation that has been bubbling up the last 4, 5, 7 weeks. It feels even longer amongst our team, and in talking to our employees, talking to our clients. What we found, I'm sure, like a lot of you, is a lot of the same themes, a lot of the same common observations were starting to crop up. And we started to think a couple of weeks ago, and we said, you know what, we talk so much about these things, and we're finding that a lot of what we're learning is resonating with our own people and our clients. And as we, along with all of you, we're trying to move forward and get that traction. So what we thought is to create a series around this idea of forced evolution. So today is really a start to what we hope is a series of conversations that will build over time, and hopefully get some of your input as we expect to get more of these in the works, and maybe even build a community of people that are responsible for brands, maybe large companies, maybe startups, and we handle a lot of clients that are active in both of those areas. But also business owners. I mean, we have the opportunity, and we'll learn a little bit more from some of the people that are joining us, is that we have experience in what's going through the minds of business owners and entrepreneurs, as well as brand managers and even HR representatives for global companies. So the thing about pandemic is that it's a great equalizer. Is everyone, everywhere, no matter size of company or position, are starting to think about the same things, and at the same time trying to figure out, okay, how do we move forward? So that is a little bit of what this is and what we hope it can be. A little bit about who we are with us today. We're gonna, and they're here obviously, and hopefully get through all of this. And as I said, we want to keep it to a healthy half an hour. So we're going to get on some conversations. And what we want to do is, just so I get this out of the way too, is that there's a question box. We want to hear from you, and we want you to kind of go through this next half hour or so with us and share your thoughts. So the us part of this is as you can see, Greg Riccardi is the president and CEO of 29, who we are. And for those who don't know, we're a brand consultancy that focuses on building purpose-first brands. And Lindsay Cohen really leads our client service, so she has the perspective on really where our clients are at, some of the things that they're thinking about right now. So there's a perspective there that we're sharing. So and myself, I head up the brand strategy and innovation at 29. So I look at really where brands are at, and how can we move forward in some practical and ideally purposeful way. And who isn't on the slide, but who's right here with us, is our creative director, Kevin Hammond, on the drums. And
I decided to crash. Yeah, sorry guys.
What's that?
I said I started to crash in, so I appreciate you letting me in.
So, and hopefully you get this idea that this is really a reflection and something we're putting up that is based on conversations that the 4 of us and the other 15 or so of us have on a regular basis, and we want to include other people who might be seeing what we're seeing, hearing what we're hearing as well. So let's see, what did I cover? Is we want to keep this nice and efficient. It's busy, it's Friday. If we can tell one day from another, I can't. It feels like a Tuesday or Sunday. But it is a Friday, so we appreciate your time. I mean, it's valuable. We know we're all home bound and things, but time is valuable. So thanks for spending some time with us. So what we're going to do is take that half an hour, and I really invite you to ask questions or share what you're thinking as we can go through this conversation. So that's a little bit about us. It's about what we're hoping to do and how we want to go about doing it. So why don't we just jump in? So I'm going to ask kind of Greg to jump in, if you would.
So good afternoon, everyone. Gary, thanks for the intro. There's, the purpose behind this, like Gary said, is designed to kind of just have a discussion. It's a lot of what we've been talking about in our own company, how we're evolving, but also how our clients are being impacted and what we can do to help them evolve and kind of navigate through this crisis that we're currently in. So one of the things that, is kind of funny, it's this forced evolution aspect behind what COVID-19 has caused for essentially everyone. In regards to our business, being forced to evolve from a highly collaborative when we're all kind of, in our own little spaces, and we have war rooms and we have collaboration centers and we're using Post-its and we're all interacting with each other, to, one day doing that and the next day we're in a virtual environment, which is relatively disruptive when it comes to a creative type of company like ours. So how do we pivot from there and recreate the dynamic creativity that we have within our company to be able to collaborate and create new things, and when we can't actually be in the same room. So that was kind of our initial forced evolution, and then obviously everything kind of falls from there. But there's aspects behind the idea of an evolutionary process where you take the Darwinian theory and everybody goes, well, the strongest is going to survive out of this entire crisis that we're in. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I think the one thing that, I kind of wanted to focus on in regards to kind of a topic, call it emotion or mood today, is there's so much content and so much being published out there that's around, kind of the relative negative impact and of COVID and what's going to cause, and there's a lot of doom and gloom, and anybody reading the news can kind of relate to that. So this is more of a positive outlook. So the ideas behind the forced evolution aspect of it, it's not always the strongest that will survive. In this case, it may actually be the smartest and the ones that can pivot the easiest, the ones that can identify the opportunities that have developed out of this and use this crisis. I mean, that's why the article that was posted a couple of days ago, the whole idea of crisis is the new mother of innovation, because the idea behind this is that, when crisis rolls in and things and companies and brands are forced to evolve, you have to think very differently about how you're going to do business and how your brand is going to connect to consumers, not just now, but also in the future. So there's certain aspects that are kind of causing that to happen. One example that we talked about the other day was the simple fact of everybody has been forced to stay at home. So the whole dynamics of people going to the gym, either in the morning or afternoon, or, and you got these big box gyms that are no longer available. People had to find a way to get exercise, and how they had to find a new way to work out. A fair amount of people went and started to create their own home gyms. They, put equipment downstairs. They found ways to work outside their house. What happens now to those gyms that had all those memberships with these people, that may not be the case anymore? So how are they going to evolve from there and accommodate this new environment in which they're in? And it's things like, will gyms go out and now, instead of having, personal trainers inside the actual gym environment, are they going to go and start offering this service on a membership basis where people come out to their house and utilize their in-house gym and they do training that way? And that's the new evolution of what memberships could be.
Well, and Greg, if I could jump in on that too, I just noticed that the gym that I belong to is now starting to come out with video training. So it's almost as if the gyms of Edge Fitness and places like that are now starting to build very much like a Peloton model, which is like, here's our trainers, here's our content. I'm sure a month or two ago, Edge Fitness, and I just use as an example, weren't thinking about doing that because they had their clients come in every day to train. So I'm just listening to you and respond to that, going, suddenly people are starting to build trainers as their own little celebrities and following a Peloton model, which they hadn't even thought about before.
I think, Gary, to build on top of that as well, not only are apps and trainers starting to stream courses, mostly free of charge, but it's becoming more of a social thing. Like I have on my calendar this weekend, a group of my friends who I typically go to the gym with or participate in classes with. We're meeting up at the same time, taking the same class, and making the most of it. But it's really this virtual hangout in a way that no one really contemplated doing before. So not only do we have access to the streaming platforms, not only are these classes now accessible to us, but we're now engaging and taking those classes together, which I think is something no one would have contemplated doing in a virtual setting just a few weeks back.
Yeah, and I think for brands that could create a challenge if they weren't doing it before and they can't respond, but also new opportunity for brands who could look at these new needs and solve in an entirely different way that might have new relevance. And just to build on that, just to move to the next idea, essentially a lot of what we were just talking about and Greg was talking about with the gyms and Lindsay as well was this idea of really change and how people react to it. I mean, that's kind of what this is. And that's really the essence of what we're talking about now, is that change has always happened around business. I mean, it was just a part of doing business. But this sudden and sweeping change of COVID-19 has knocked a lot of people and a lot of brands really on their butts. And they're in a position now that we've thought about, and it feels like this state of forced evolution, which is essentially you don't have a choice. And brands that don't sort of see that are truly going to be struggling, because you have to understand that this pandemic is creating that stress on brands. So this forced evolution is something that we all have to deal with, but not to get doomy and gloomy about it. Good news is that the as good as it can be, is that the pandemic, I think we all understand, is terrible, but it's temporary. So what can brands do? And I think from what we're hearing and seeing, that there are really three options for brands and frankly any company, is that you can shut it down. Not the best thing in the world, but some just have to do that. They shut it down. The other one is to ride it out and wait, which seems like that's the prudent thing to do. But from a business, that's really not. And I think we all can understand why. And the third one is to come out stronger. And it is, of those three, I mean, you can understand the decision to come out stronger is where everyone wants to be, but it does take work. And I think what we wanted to do was look at seven ways that we're starting to see that brands, our own clients, as well as ones we see every day on the larger stage, are starting to use to deal with this state of forced evolution. As if to say, look, we're a brand, big, small, medium, whatever, is that we have to move forward. How are we going to do it? And we have of seven, they're not definitive answers, but they're suggestions that starting, at least for us, are starting to get some traction that we wanted to share and get some of your feedback. And let's have a look.
Great.
So
and Megan, we do see your question. Thank you, very much appreciated. We will certainly get to that. I love that topic, and we can dive into that a little bit more in just a few minutes. But the first point we wanted to make is really around respecting the gravity of the moment at hand, which I think is pretty straightforward and certainly unavoidable given the circumstances at hand. And the reality is that everyone right now is trying to navigate in their new normal in the midst of the pandemic and in the midst of everything that we're faced with. I think in our industry in particular, that primarily involves, employees, clients, prospects, customers, even vendors. It's a really hard and challenging time for everyone, and we can't lose sight of the fact that we're all human and we're all in this together in our own ways. And I think we need to be empathetic to everyone's situation. It's really important to remember that as we engage with clients and prospects, that we don't know what's going on in the background of our Zoom calls. What we do know is that we're all doing what is needed to operate as best as we can, both personally and professionally. I think that we also need to recognize that individuals are in a really challenging space right now, emotionally, financially, you name it. And in doing so, we need to be careful not to reflect our own biases on others, because we truly don't know what's going on in the other rooms of their homes or what their circumstances may be. So I think the level of personal and corporate stress that individuals are enduring, it needs to be acknowledged, and it needs to be explicitly acknowledged. I think that acknowledgement shows an added layer of empathy that is needed in maintaining real human connections. And I also think that this verbal and open acknowledgement of the stress level and strain that we're enduring allows for a level of natural vulnerability and recognizes that as humans, we get it. We're all going through it. And at the very least, I think that we're all connected because of that. At 29, we're definitely doing our best to engage and connect with all individuals, not just companies, but individuals within those companies, the individuals that really keep us going. And we want to ensure that the support that they have provided us with to date is constantly reciprocated in whatever way we may be able to do so. So ultimately, I think really supporting each other during this time in a way that is empathetic, in a way that is transparent, and a way that is positive is essential to getting us through this and will allow us to actually progress onward in whatever direction that may be entail. Ultimately, I really think that we need to be working with one another in order to get there, and that's the reality.
And to build on that, Lindsay, you're getting me thinking about this as well, is that pre-COVID, whatever, January or February, or even at the end of last year, going into 2020, there are many trend reports and a lot of different meta trends out there. And I can't help but remember the rise again of empathy, and companies large and small going empathy, be human, be human, be human. And then COVID-19 happens, and it's basically your feet to the fire, and basically destiny or the gods saying, all right, show me what that is.
Yes.
And I think the empathy piece, and I know Greg spent a lot of time thinking about this, is the empathy is, it starts at home, is understanding, okay, what's going through the heads of our employees, wonders and fears, and how's that going to work? And again, for business owners and entrepreneurs, the question of layoff versus furloughs, compensation, 401ks. I mean, the empathy, you have to really go head first into understanding your own employees and
Absolutely.
what's going through there, and then clients. And we spent, as again, this isn't a new idea because many or all companies do this, is you reach out to your clients and saying, how can I help? Or again, we have a lot of clients that are right in the middle of some of this, including healthcare and health science, as well as financial tech. So everything on the client side, we want to be there to help and to be respectful of it, but be present, and then lastly, their clients but also communities. I mean, we're having conversations with others, maybe some of you, about what's going through our minds and how do we move forward? Because I think this is an opportunity to build community. So I just wanted to kind of build on that.
Totally.
So as an extension to the issues that was just covered by Gary in regards to the impact of what this crisis has, I think the one thing, as a CEO of a business, and this is financial crisis or crisis that that we've seen or been through, but it's very different from the others. I think the one aspect of it, when this rolled in, there's that initial kind of confusion and panic and frustration of like, what's going to happen, and that anxiety just breeds a lot of fear. And part of my role as a CEO in the business is, I have to understand and respect that my fear and my anxiety about the current situation and having my responsibility of maintaining, the financial well-being of this company is the impact of my, employees and the people that work at 29. And having empathy and understanding around that is the only way that I can address it is to be as transparent and honest and respectful to their financial situations. This is somewhat different from, the 2008 experience where, this is a global impact, and it's not just one industry or a couple industries, it's everything. And the idea behind the fact of people start talking about layoffs and salary cuts. The ultimate impact behind that is if somebody gets laid off in this environment, there's no way they're going to get another job. Nobody's going to hire. There's certain industries that obviously are, but they're not within our current industry. So, understanding that the fear that's currently in those employees and understanding that, respecting that, allows you to be a lot more honest and open and transparent and go, this is what I'm dealing with. I don't have all the answers, but this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. That plan might change next week. It might change tomorrow, but I'll let you know as it changes, and we're going to get through this. And the idea that the impact isn't just on, myself or the individual employees, it's everyone, and it's across the board. And if you understand that, you can certainly respond responsibly to the issues at hand, and you can be respectful, and you can all work as a team to get through this. So, I mean, that's been the entire focus of what we've been doing from the day that this started. So, revising your strategy. So, based on that understanding, I think the interesting thing is that, in 2008, it was almost like everybody woke up one morning and it was like, oh my God, the entire world just collapsed. Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns just overnight just collapsing, and everybody went into a tailspin of a panic. It was very specific, and it happened so quickly. People didn't understand what was going to be the impact and how it was going to roll out and affect them. Us personally, it took a couple years for the impact to actually hit our business, but when it did, it hit hard, and it was somewhat unexpected because the way our clients were responding to it. This was a little bit different. I mean, the idea behind this was you kind of saw it coming, but you kind of didn't. I mean, it was like there was this kind of roll in of like, this crisis started happening. People started to report on it. You started talking about, well, what does this mean? What's going to be the impact? You start hearing about states changing regulations about, staying at home and what the impact will be on people going to work and the office space. And then next thing you know, it just kind of happened, but it wasn't something that was completely overnight unexpected. And next thing you know, you're like, boom. So there was a benefit to the actual fact that you could kind of somewhat prepare for this and you could lean into it. The challenge that you had is that all the financial planning and kind of the strategy that you put in place for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 for 2020 has all been scrapped. It's all went to shit because it's like now you're not planning per quarter. You're planning literally every 2 weeks with the complete uncertainty of what happens in, what's going to happen at the April 30th or, back in March. It's like, as you start to push down further, it's like, are they going to extend this? What's going to happen? When's the curve going to flatten? When's everything going to start to open up? And you have to just literally every single day, just take a look and revise your strategy. And I think part of that is like when you first started out, you started looking at your pipeline and you're like, okay, that's my pipeline. And within a week or two, you start to realize that pipeline's not going to be there. And then you got to figure out new ways to identify new opportunities within your business to generate new business opportunities, revenue. How do you organically grow? You start looking at opportunities not only internally, but also with your clients as well, and help them revise their strategy about how they're going to market. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's an interesting thing because the impact of this wasn't a punch to the face. It was kind of like a gut punch, and then you kind of got down to one knee and you started to get up a little bit, and then somebody hits you again. And it's like it's a constant struggle to figure out how to get out of this. But I think the benefit of it is, our initial impact was how do we effectively operate in an environment where all of a sudden now we're virtual. So we revised our strategy and we started to coordinate and figure out how can we do collaboration and innovation sessions and immersion sessions with our clients and ourselves internally, and create war rooms that are virtual and be effective, because we still had to deliver on that for our clients so that our clients could actually roll that out to the markets.
Yeah, and just to build on that before we go on to the next is I mentioned earlier, empathy was such a buzzword. The other one right behind it was this idea of agility, and for the same reasons as I mentioned earlier, is agility can't be a buzzword anymore. We're all talking about understanding change and trying to find that right pivot. That's really what forced evolution is really all about. Is finding the smart, practical, perhaps innovative new pivot. And it doesn't come easy, but it certainly does take that revision in order to sort of see the world as it is, and then to reinsert yourself into it. So it's a little unnerving, but it's exciting for a team to consider.
Great. All very true. The next point is really around reframing and shaping the value that create. And I think really being rooted in purpose is something that we've been diligent about setting the foundation for. And I'll invite Greg and Gary to speak to that purpose first orientation in a bit. But I think ultimately the value that we're creating now more than ever must be both human and action oriented. And of course, above all, as I said, really rooted in purpose. I think once an organization has really identified and clarified what their purpose orientation is, and that orientation needs to be sustainable. It needs to adapt, but it also needs to last, and it needs to sustain. We can then reframe it in the construct of being both human-centric and action-oriented. During this time, I think we need to ask ourselves, how can we bring this to life, this concept of purpose to life for not only ourselves, but for our employees, for our customers, for our prospects, and ultimately everyone that interacts with our brand. We also have to ask, what does it mean and how does it ladder up to our strategic mission of the organization? And how do we bring that to life in a really human way that drives meaningful and measurable value for individuals, for customers, for companies, everyone that we're really partnering with right now. As a company, I think that we've had to pivot in some ways in the methods that we've known to traditionally work to really place a prominence and an emphasis on this human-oriented approach that reaches people not only where they are, but when they need to be reached. It's really the only way that we can continue to provide that level of meaningful support and continue to foster and strengthen relationships. We've definitely at 29 focused on what we're doing to refine how we articulate our solutions. And in terms of cultivating those relationships, they're virtual for now, but we're working hard at doing that with our clients and within our teams. In some strange way, I think it's actually been really valuable for our growth because we've had to rethink what and how we're delivering across all dimensions. But ultimately at our core, I think the best support system we can be is just continuing to be there for one another, and really the rest I think will follow suit.
Yeah, and to build on what Lindsay was saying is to look at the world outside and take Nike. You heard earlier that we do talk about being a consultancy that helps build purpose first brands. I think we'd all agree that Nike is one of the most notable purpose first brands out there, but yet their ability to pivot and be relevant and still maintain their purpose was artful. And what they did was that they're forever known as the Just Do It guys, but now their campaign about play inside, play for millions is essentially saying, look, don't stop being athletic aspirants and being Nike brand lovers, but just do it differently because it's relevant, it matters, and it does take the high road. And to be purpose first is to find your own nobility in a way that's believable. And that nobility says, look, all right, don't stop being who you are, but just play inside and play for the world. And you might have seen some of the work around people doing these extraordinary athletic things in their home, kids dunking basketballs and whatever it was. It was artful and strategically brilliant to just recalibrate their purpose in a way that is completely relevant and as Lindsay mentioned, human. And I think people appreciate that, and it just shows that agility and empathy kind of combining together in a new brand story without changing your story. It was really cool. Which kind of feeds into this next idea, really, is recalibrating your message. And we've touched on it before, but when we're now working with clients and partners, and at this particular time, recalibrating your message really is a matter of just doing that human check-in. It's a couple of these different 7 points together, which is, you know, when you're being respectful and empathetic, you're able to recalibrate your message without changing it in a way that is people appreciate and say, you know, thanks for coming along with this. And that's why you see things like people on webinars and things talking about, you know, you got to go to your homepage and change it, you know, and whether you buy into that or not, what it says is you've got to acknowledge what's going on and be contextually tuned in, but then adapt messaging that makes sense. And I would just go back to this most recent example of really play inside and play for the world without fundamentally changing who you are, but taking the time, this is important, taking the time to get the messaging right that resonates. So I think that's important for this fifth.
Well, I think you can, you know, Gary, to that point, I think you can look at, you know, some of the larger brands, take hotels.com, for example. I mean, hotels.com, you know, they literally had to completely change their entire ad that they were going to run with, you know, Captain Obvious, where it was very human centric, just connected, and quite honestly, he was stealing snacks out of somebody else's food, to a point where it's like him just sitting in a chair and he's going to socially distance now. You know, all the way to, you know, you can take what KFC did. I mean, you take a long time standing finger looking good. It's not about licking your fingers anymore. So it's kind of, I don't want to say it's funny, but you sit there and you realize that these you know, classic brands that had these, you know, memorable taglines or messaging had to be kind of looked at, because finger looking good is almost offensive at this point in regards to what's currently happening. And
right,
you know, how do they have to pivot from there? It's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, and reclaim your core. We've said a couple times already that this idea of putting purpose first, we just talk about it in terms of when you're able to, as a brand or a company, even a team within large companies, when you're able to put purpose first, and by putting it first, we mean being able to define it and articulate it and activate it in a meaningful way. Everything else naturally falls into place. And for us, the idea of reclaiming that core is not just about being able to express an authentic purpose, but it's about alignment. You know, core is about having your purpose aligned with your mission, vision, and values. And there's no more important time than times like these where you align your values. I mean, how come companies can be as good as they are in getting their culture rallied and in the same place and in a safe place? And it's largely because the values have been expressed so well and they're being lived. They're just not messaging in the lobby. And when we did this about a year or more ago, we took a lot of time, and it was painstaking to get the values, express them in a way that wasn't a Pollyanna or a greeting card, and really resonate. And who knew that, you know, that kind of work would be tested? I mean, you really feet to the fire right now when you're putting values out and have a purpose. You know how authentic and just how genuine it is when your purpose, your vision, your values are tested like this. So, and I think we had mentioned earlier is that we have, and even prior to COVID, we were doing purpose first workshops where we would get with teams. And sometimes, you know, it seems easy, but each company, large and small, and I mean like super large, pull their team together and figure out, okay, what is a real purpose that's actionable and that we can animate and not just words on a lobby. How can we make it a part of who we are? And I think in a workshop like this, it's worth every bit of effort. And even if reclaiming your core, you never did it, claim it. Right now is an opportunity to claim the purpose, get the vision right. Where do we fit in the whole marketplace right now? And visions have been revised probably just as well. But among them is value, because the values are the foot soldiers of a great purpose. and it's worth figuring out. And quite honestly, it's where we spend and have spent a lot of time just working with small leadership teams and figuring out those fundamentals. Because once you can align that, as we just said, is that once you figure that out, it's suddenly everything naturally falls into place. I'm not going to say it's easier, but it becomes more logical, and everyone on the team knows exactly why you're doing things. And I can't think of a more important time than this to get all those vitally important things aligned. But I think I can't overstate the value. So number 7.
So, I mean, the idea of every challenge as a chance to innovate is kind of the core of this entire focus. So it's, the concept behind crisis is the new mother of is really the opportunity to kind of look crisis and challenge in the face and create something new, or see it as an opportunity instead of as a disaster. And, I talked earlier about the difference between 2008 and currently, but the impact of what happens is you can take, a really good example is Zoom. Zoom saw this. I mean, this was a great opportunity for Zoom. Everybody had to go virtual, and they needed ways to video network. However, in the process of it, they had a major security flaw. So the challenge is, how do we get around the security flaw? How do we ramp up our capabilities and our service set? But at the same time, this challenge has caused an opportunity to make the product better, make it more secure, and enhance their technology so that it can be pushed out to the future. It can actually compete and become a big challenger brand moving forward. The other aspect of it is too, is you look at, in 2008, that crisis caused a lot of impact that created a lot of innovation that we take for granted currently. I mean, you take Instagram, Slack. I mean, it changed the way we communicate socially, how we communicate business-wise. You can take a look at Uber, how it changed transportation. All of this came out of that crisis because people either got laid off or had to figure out new ways, or saw new opportunities to reinvent what we currently were used to. Crisis, there's opportunity to reinvent the world in which we live in. Groupon, for example, coming out of 2008's crisis. I mean, the idea that people just didn't have the financial or weren't in a financial position and didn't have the disposable income, so they were looking for opportunities to save money, and Groupon was born out of that process. And now we're seeing it again. I mean, if you look at, I talked about the gyms earlier, and I'll bring it right back because you've got companies like Peloton that were doing fairly good. Now this is a massive opportunity for them to kind of excel. There's other brands like Tonal and The Mirror. There's even a boxing one. Everything's becoming virtual and working. How do you create a virtual environment that people can work out at home, but have that human connection outside of it? So, industry reinvented around that concept. I think when you look at what we do and what we've done over the years, from down to helping companies reevaluate who they are and reposition and create and energize positive change within the company, within the culture. You also look at the challenges that we had about identifying new products to bring to market. All of those things come out of a challenge. And this couldn't be a greater challenge to actually, instead of going, like Gary mentioned before, it's like nothing, or you can actually embrace it and start to identify new ways to kind of push out. And Megan, to your question point, it's like, the forced digital evolution, the idea of digital connection disappearing moving forward is not going to go away. I think disrupted the digital market so much that now we have to rethink about, what does that digital market look like after this? You've got a captive audience. I mean, you take a look at Amazon and how people are working through Open Table. What does Open Table look like now moving forward? Their adaptation to identifying reservations for grocery stores right now through Open Table is fascinating. So the digital market and how that, how do you utilize that moving forward? You take upon that challenge of what is that experience going to be, and how do you continue to connect in an environment where you may not have that captive audience anymore? It's a fascinating challenge, and it's going to breed an incredible amount of innovation and invention coming out of it.
Yeah, and if I could build on that, 2 things were just kind of bubbling up as you were talking, and a couple of the questions kind of gravitate towards this, and Megan was first up to ask this. Is this digital? evolution. And the interesting thing is because we work with a large and growing number of technology companies, everything from ad tech to fintech, a variety of things. And something that has always been true is that technology at its best unleashes sort of the humanness of people. And so much of what was said and got a head nod before pre-COVID is coming to fruition right now. So when you look at, how can you accelerate the digital force evolution is to continually find that human element that lives in whatever you're doing, whatever category you're in, whatever value you're trying to create for whatever customer or user, not just putting purpose first, but putting that human first and figuring out how it fits into their lives. So I hopefully a couple of our answers give you, Megan, a sense of how we would treat it. The other thing was interesting is and I spend a lot of time just by my role of trying to figure out an innovation path for whatever the client is, and innovation means different things to different people. But it was astounding that Dyson said, okay, understood. We've got our cyclone and our vacuums. We're gonna invent something along the lines of a ventilator. So they invented Covent. Imagine the brilliance of Dyson engineering in a ventilator. And I don't quote me on this, but they said that the time to market and completion of it was like a 10-day process. So just think about this. It's important to, at this stage of today, is to understand that forced evolution isn't just scary. I mean, it's exhilarating for those who are able to react and marshal their expertise and perspective and talents in a way that has even a greater good. And Dyson was remarkable.
Yeah, and I want to build on that too. I mean, just thinking about like the B2B world that we're working in right now, you have the sales teams kind of hamstrung to go and get coffee with people or to like do demos or go out there. So I think now we have clients hitting us up to really kind of think through how do we help the sales team, because everybody's now actually have more time. They're at home. They're able to sit in front of more online demos or just to actually like see that whatever they have to sell in an online fashion, in a video fashion. So clients are hitting us up for how do we arm the sales team with like more automated things or websites with very clear demo video assets to really kind of make the connection and resonate with what they're dealing with. So, and to kind of, let the sales team kind of get back to what they're really trying to do, but like have some more automation and, virtual video assets kind of help them support what everybody's dealing with right now. So that's,
and I think that, I think that it's not only how do we automate and how do we make these circumstances virtual, but in doing so, the biggest challenge is how do we make it feel human and how do we make it feel personalized and how do we make it convey a sense of connection while we can't actually experience that in person. And it's certainly something that we know a lot of clients are faced with at the moment, and we're committed to working together to resolve. But it's certainly an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and as part of that, we all know the importance, again, prior to COVID, of storytelling. Every category and every brand and customers and even employees, there's so many great stories that live within companies. Just imagine in a 2-month period the new stories and the new opportunity for storytelling that exists, and what an asset to be able to do it digitally. And I, honestly, as we're all seeing, I mean, we've all watched the videos, in our many hours of being home. There are some great stories being told of using video, and to build on Kevin's point, sales can be empowered by leveraging technology and leveraging a digital approach to tell stories that are more of a sales intent. So some really powerful things. And if I may, a question came in, which is a really great question, which is, where's the best place to start? And you guys can chime in, but for me, the best place to start is going to be different. I mean, every company is going to
Mhm.
have a sense of like need, and based on the challenges, they'll figure it out. The best place to start, but beyond that, fitting the particular need, I'm maybe biased, but the idea of really reclaiming that core and getting that purpose correct, and getting it aligned with a real vision of where we go from here, along with mission, which is essentially what do we do every day to make this real. And then lastly, if your values again don't reverberate through your halls, it's a missed opportunity. We'll call it that. So a good place to start is to realigning the fundamentals of what makes brands and businesses work and go forward. So I'm biased and would open it up, but I think it's an important place to start once you can get that aligned.
Yep.
Looks
like another question just came in, Gar. If coronavirus subsides in July, can't we just pick up where our businesses left off? So
right.
that's an interesting one. You can start, Gar.
Well, I think this is not going to be a big aha moment. Is that going back to the way things were ain't happening. I think we all know that. I mean, just emotionally, what we've all gone through, we just can't hit a reset button and start doing things the same way we did in January and February. So I think just by the nature of that question, you can't just pick up where we left off. We've got to go through some work. We've got to go through some thinking, and we have to really plug into this next normal that right now is formulating, and it will the rest of this year. So.
Yeah, but I mean, even to that point, so you've got, and I said this before, it's not necessarily the strongest that survives, it's the smartest. So if you take, a company that's got a strong market or a hold on the market share, and that's your competition, and you're constantly fighting against them, the size or the scale of that competition to you may be an advantage moving forward.
Yeah.
You're smaller, you have more opportunities to be able to pivot, and because of that ability to pivot, that larger company's got the market share might be slower to market because they may not have the financial capabilities, or they may have been hurt staff-wise on a greater level than you were. So the opportunity to come out of the market, everybody's like, well, it's going to take years for this to kind of come back. And in our industry, we're like, well, we need brands to start spending money on marketing and brand development and pushing out and connecting with the consumers. What are we going to do if they're not spending? I think what a brand's going to do if they don't spend, if they don't start reconnecting with their customer base immediately, because they haven't done anything in so long, because consumers just aren't interacting the way they used to. So this is a perfect opportunity to get back out there strong.
It's great point.
Leverage on your competition. If you're first to market, consumers will gravitate towards it because they are so dying to get back to what normal is. It'll never be normal, but the idea behind it, if you can normalcy and connection to your consumer quicker than your competition and capitalize on those moments, you're going to be able to come out of this thing in a much greater position than you ever could going into it.
I think that's a great point, and a topic that has come up in a lot of the conversations recently. I'll share, and it's I'm sure something a lot of companies wrestle with, which is the idea. There are a lot of choices, and earlier on in this conversation, we talked about the 3 choices that brands need to make. Well, there are the 2 really important ones. And as a brand kind of comes out of this and starts to say, what are we going to do? There are 2 choices. And I think we're seeing a combination of both right now. It just is that you can go dark or you can be a beacon. What do you want to do? What are you fit to do? What are you ready to do? Some brands aren't positioned to be a beacon because they really haven't gotten a lot of this stuff together yet. But to go dark is an option, and do it, but know what is ahead. If you go dark, there's a lot of legwork when you decide to come out of that. But the idea of choosing to be a beacon and not just going dark is exciting, and it incorporates a lot of what we're looking at right now, is understanding that every challenge isn't just a challenge, but it's a chance to be better and do something new and do something compelling. And I think it's a matter of choosing to go dark, and many have done it, or choosing to be a beacon. And I think, anyone would know where the several of us live, and it's being that beacon. So any other comments from you guys, and any other questions you guys want to tackle?
Yeah, we got another question in here. We mentioned Nike and KFC. Are there other examples of brands out there that are pivoting well with this forced evolution?
I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, I mentioned Open Table. I mean, Instacart. I mean, they're all taking advantage of the current situation. But I think what's interesting is the entire online ordering system, the food delivery market, Uber Eats, Caviar. What's that? Even Caviar, they to some extent they couldn't scale up the businesses that didn't have delivery service prior to this. So there was this kind of mad scramble to find out or discover other resources that could scale up. So there were companies out there that turned around and found new ways to scale up quickly. But you take Open Table, whose entire business model is based around making reservations for people to go out to eat. When nobody's going out to eat anymore, how do you pivot quickly enough to make yourself still relevant to keep your brand connected to the consumer base that you're currently with?
Yeah.
The idea of going on there and being able to see all the restaurants that you're used to and giving connection to either Uber Eats or Caviar for delivery service or pickup, and then you can actually connect through it and they became more of a connected resource than an actual reservation tool. So they're still relevant within the consumer mind. So to me, I thought that was a brilliant way to be able to pivot, stay relevant, stay connected to consumer base so that when it does come out of this, consumers aren't going to find some other place to start making reservations at, because it is a soft spot for them, and it is definitely an opportunity for a challenger brand to come in there and create a new order on reservation system that could target and quite honestly take market share from them.
Yeah, the next one that comes to mind isn't a big brand, but Bob's Big Boy in Burbank, California, is now instituting car hop service. And it's part of their brand, and you all know the Big Boy, with his hamburger and things. So now the brand is re-engaging with customers in a way that is extremely human and actually part of their brand equity. So now they have people running, people pull up with their, I don't know, when's the last time anyone has had a tray of food hung from their mirror or from their windows? Been a while. So there's a bit of nostalgia, and I think there are other brands that's interesting that, when we get into times like this, it's amazing how quickly often we love nostalgia and we go simple. And I think car hops take us back to a place, and I don't know the extent of it, but I'm starting to see stories popping up of drive-in movies are back.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. The funny thing, I'm probably gonna see an expansion of drive. You can't get together in a crowd in a theater.
No.
The movie industry is getting pounded by the fact that people can't go to a theater to see a movie, but there are drive-in theaters around there. I wouldn't be surprised to see all these new pop-ups that might happen within the next few months to be able people to go out, socialize in their car, and still watch a movie.
And that's brands having their antenna up, going, are you seeing what I'm seeing? We need to do this, and to be agile enough to get out and do it. And I think it probably wasn't hard for Bob's Big Boy, but they didn't have to do that. But it was a little brilliant, frankly. So those are some that come to mind. Anything else from you guys, or is there any other questions or anything else that any of you guys that are still hanging on have a question or a thought to share? Otherwise, we'll wrap up, and it's been great. Hopefully for those who remained, that we've covered a lot of ground in a little bit more than a half an hour. So want to end on this idea, and this one was actual. We're in a meeting with clients about a week, maybe 10 days ago, and a very large program was going to be launched this year, and it's still going to be launched, but there's some changes and adaptations that need to be made. But there was a moment in the meeting we just want to share with you guys that maybe it's something you can take and run with. Was in the meeting, our client, a very senior level client at the time, basically said to the room, okay, and I'm hearing this, I'm hearing plans and what we need to do. And she just said very genuinely, look, we still have things to do, so you might as well be smart about it. And everyone in the room, I think it really engaged everyone and rallied everyone to say, if you ask yourself as a team, no matter what business you're in and what brand you're in, you probably still have things to do. how can you do it in a smart way, and how can you do it in a way that's relevant and elevate your brand? Because and we really want to make sure you don't walk away that forced evolution doesn't have to be bad. Forced evolution just maybe makes you open your eyes and see things you didn't see before. So and that's a great thing. So we hope you got something out of today. We certainly did, and we talk like this a lot just amongst ourselves. So hopefully you got some value out of it, and perhaps we'll have another session like this. If we all have the time, we'd love to invite you guys back in to do this again around some new topics. But hey, we're to use a very common theme right now. We're all in this together, and it's a great time to have some shared ideas and conversations going out there to make things better and make brands better. So that's it. Have a great Friday. That feels like a Monday. That feels like a Sunday. That feels like a day. And have a great weekend. And perhaps we'll connect with you guys again. And also, I think, it is there. If you guys want to continue a conversation or have questions, feel free to kind of hit us up via emails that you see here, and would be glad to continue it with you. Otherwise, thanks for your valuable time, and see you guys later.